Hi. So I'm really excited to be here today to tell you a story about how a single conversation I had with a complete stranger completely transformed my life and sparked this revolution of growth, I would say, and also enabled me to lead a movement for girls. And before I tell you this story, I want to ask a question. It's a question that I think will really get to the crux of why I'm telling you this story, and it's also a question that I hope my story helps to answer. And it's similar to, if any of you know the Renaissance writer Machiavelli, he asked this question about leaders. He asked, is it better for a leader to be feared or to be loved by their people? Unfortunately, his conclusion was that it was better to be feared. And instead of arguing with Mr. Machiavelli on this stage, I'm just going to be so bold as to modify the question. So here's the Emily Greener version of it. Is it better for a leader to be known or not to be known? So we're leaders. I think everyone in this room is a leader. So as leaders of our communities and leaders of our school and leaders of our family, as parents of children, as teachers of students, how accessible should we be? It's this weird, scary thing, this line we draw of how accessible should we be? Should we continue going along pretending to be these leaders made of steel, like the world tells us to be? Or should we be known? It's a question that I had a long time ago and that over time has kind of unraveled into this phenomenon that is this organization. So the day that I came up with the answer to that question was the day I met this lady. This is Alexis Jones. I had been in LA about a year, and I went out there to pursue my big dream of acting. And I got invited to a party downtown, and I went to this party, and I shook her hand, and we were introduced. And in this moment, I half joked that something in the universe happened, and there was a sonic boom, and the world was never again the same. Certainly my world was never again the same. So I pulled up a chair and I sat down and she told me her story, except she didn't tell me the version of her story that was wrapped in a pretty bow. She told me the version of her story that was challenging. She told me about her confusions and her difficulties and her fears, and she was honest and it was exciting. She told me about the things she was ashamed of. She told me about the things that she was embarrassed by, and she told me about the things that she was really proud of and why she thought that she was awesome. And as I'm witnessing her tell me this story, I feel like the feelings inside of my body. I'm like, what's going on? I could feel all these feelings. And what was happening to me that I didn't know then, but I absolutely know now, was that it was the first time I'd ever experienced someone leading with vulnerability. And the crazy thing is, I felt myself wanting to follow. So why? Why would we want to lead with vulnerability? What makes it so powerful when someone is honest and open? What makes us want to follow those people? I believe there are several reasons, but the first one, I think, is that it creates a connection. There's something that happens when someone says the thing out loud that everybody else is thinking and no one's willing to talk about. All of a sudden, whether it's me in front of all of you or you and one other individual, but you decide to say the thing out loud, there's all of a sudden this sense of community. So now we're kind of in this together, and what you're saying is exactly relevant to what's going on inside of my body, and I'm feeling connected to you, and I'm feeling more connected to myself, and I'm inspired to follow you, because we don't get to walk around the world connected. We walk around the world very disconnected. We're all terrified of being who we actually are. So when someone's brave enough to actually go there, it feels amazing. So I'm sitting there with Alexis, and we're talking, and she's sharing, and she's being awesome, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, I want to share stuff with you, and I want to tell you stuff, and I want to tell you like some serious stuff, and I want to tell you some stuff that I didn't even really know I was thinking, and stuff I didn't really even know I was feeling. And so I start to share with her, and my mind is blown. I'm like, what? It's like that that scene when Will Ferrell is like outside of his own body watching himself be brilliant. I was like, who are you? You've never told these things to anyone before. Why are you bearing your soul to this girl? And I felt so connected. And then I immediately realized how disconnected I felt my entire life and how I really, really liked this feeling. And so then it kind of took me back to when I was younger. I actually didn't have to, well, I guess it wasn't that I didn't have to, but I chose not to really take many risks. And I moved through a lot of crowds, and I was successful moving through these crowds without taking risks. And one story in particular, if you would all be so kind as to let me be vulnerable with you right now, it's that moment in middle school. I walked in the cafeteria, and I took 3 steps in, and I stopped dead in my tracks, and I realized that I didn't know where I was going to sit at the lunch table in the cafeteria, which, as all of us know, pretty much determines the rest of your life, obviously. So I was like, that's right. Emily Greener's just going to walk on over to the popular table and sit down and be cool and, okay, yeah, this feels good. I can handle this. So I walk over, and I don't, of course, realize I'm doing this in the moment, but when I look back, I can recall that what I did in that moment was thought, okay, if I act like I think I'm as pretty, and I think I'm as skinny, and I think I'm as fashionable, well, maybe nobody will notice. And I'm going to kind of overcompensate for all of these insecurities I have with my winning personality. So that's what I did. I wore my personality on my sleeve, and my happiness on my sleeve, and my brightness, and my shininess, and hi, everybody, I'm a really amazing friend. And so what happened was, by the way, all true things, but the only problem was that I became so wrapped up in my identity to be all of these things that the idea of insecurity, fear, or doubt had no place in my body, had no place in my mind, had no place in my heart, because the reason why people loved me, I thought, was because I was confident. And the reason why I was popular was because I was always happy and I was always there for everybody. And so I had to push fear and insecurity and doubt so far down that I actually believed I didn't have any. Let me tell you something. Everybody has that. But I literally lived a life believing that I didn't have that. So cool, that sounds like it could be fine and okay. What's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with that is that I could never let anyone fully in. I couldn't even really let myself fully in, because if I did, I'd have to acknowledge the fact that I was riddled with insecurity, of course, and I was riddled with doubt and riddled with fear. And by the way, that's okay. That's the thing that creates a connection. So anyway, so I got back to LA. So I moved through high school, class president, homecoming queen. This winning formula of my personality was working out great. I got to LA, and I went, like I said, to pursue acting, and I went on being everything for everyone else and never having to focus on me until that moment when I met Alexis. And everything changed in that moment because she sparked something inside of me I didn't know existed. I didn't know that needed to exist. I didn't know that I wanted to exist. And so the other thing about being vulnerable that is so unbelievably powerful, that beyond it creating a connection, it gives people permission. So Alexis and I started asking ourselves all of these questions. We're 24 years old and like the height of our passion lives. And we started asking all these big questions about what it means to be a girl in the 21st century. So why are we so mean to each other? I don't know. Why are we so mean to ourselves? What would be possible if we created a space that was safe to have all the conversations that nobody else is having, and here we could? We would be the ones to say it out loud. What if we launched the 21st century women's movement? What would that look like? Yeah, one where you could be smart and sexy, one where you could be fierce and feminine and bold and beautiful, and we would invite men into the conversation. And not only would we invite them, but we would require them. And yes, let's do this. How do we do this? Okay. And Alexis had an idea about how to do this. And it was called I Am That Girl. And really, without thinking twice, I was like, can I join you to launch this organization? And she said yes. And so we went home, we went home. We didn't know each other. We were strangers. But she went home and I went home. And I came over the next day and we were going to write a Craigslist ad because the idea was to launch an interactive online magazine that was going to say all things relevant to what it means to be a girl, and it was going to invite the readers to talk back and take these conversations into their lives, AKA it was a blog. But anyway, it was fancy for us at the time. And so she's writing this Craigslist ad, but this isn't just any Craigslist ad. This is like a credo battle cry. She's vigorously writing. There's like steam coming off of her fingers. I'm over her shoulder like, say the thing about the 21st century women's movement! And my veins all popping out of my head. And she's like, oh yeah, thanks, that was a good one. And so we close the thing and we go to lunch and we're so excited. We're going to change the world. And we get back to our computer and we open it up. And there are over 300 applications for an unpaid internship. We were like, whoa, this is not just us. Now we really have to do this. So we brought on these interns, 23 interns from all walks of life, and we had a company meeting out of our apartment, and we really didn't know a lot about much. But we did know that we wanted this space we provided to be based on what inspired us, which was the ability and freedom to be honest, to be open, to be vulnerable, the freedom to be known. So everyone walks in, and we said to them something like, this is a space where you can be who you are, instead of who you think you're supposed to be. And I'd like to just say that again to you. This is a space where you can be who you are, instead of who you think you're supposed to be. It's a space where we want you to be honest, and we want you to be vulnerable, and we want you to be open. And we're going to ask you not to judge. And when you do, because you're human, and so am I, just try to catch it and not judge again the next time. You don't have to agree with each other. I don't think that's the point of life. You actually don't even have to like each other. But we do have to respect each other. And everyone is heard, and we're going to have each other's backs. So go ahead. Tell us who you are and what you're struggling with and why you think you're awesome. Yeah, it was like pretty much as quiet as it is in here right now, because why would anyone jump off the building without like watching someone go first? And in that moment, Alexis and I realized that we could not be so bold as to ask someone to be vulnerable if we weren't brave enough to go first. Go first, people. Go first. If we're going to be the warriors and the champions on behalf of changing the world and leading the world, we have to be the ones to go first. We can't sit on the sidelines and not participate. So this really brilliant psychologist says, it is easier in our society to be naked physically than to be naked psychologically or spiritually. Easier for us to share our bodies than share our hopes, fears, and aspirations. Crazy. He's right. We're all walking around with this armor. We're walking around with these layers and layers and layers of stuff between us and everyone else. We've got these like silent wars and battles going on inside of our systems, and it's showing up in the way that we're interacting with each other. We're all frantic to be everyone other than who we are, when we are, where we are, right now. The world says all of these things that matters, and based on that, we create these expectations for ourselves, and we create these expectations for each other, and we're trapped. Someone's got to step up. Someone has to lead the way and say the thing out loud that nobody else is saying, so that everybody else can breathe and have permission to be who they are and to say, me too. Can I get a me too? Everybody has the same stuff. How often are you in like your closest knit circle and one person's brave enough to say something out loud and then everyone else is like, oh my God, me too. So beyond a connection and beyond giving people permission, it establishes trust. Being honest and being vulnerable has us trust each other. I'm me and you're you. You see yourself in my story, and I see myself in yours, and therefore I will follow you anywhere. Tell me where to go, how to do it, how hard to work, and I'm in. We just have to trust each other. So when Alexis and I went first, and we said something like, I'm afraid, and I'm alone, And I really just want you all to like me. And I've never said that before, and so that's what makes me awesome, and thank you for listening. And one after another, girls just started opening up. The armor started falling off. It was like we waved a flag and said we're unarmed. One girl would talk about being bullied, and the next girl would talk about being a bully, and they had this reconciliation, and all of our minds were blown. And I joked that girls were sprouting wings and flying out the door, and Alexis and I looked at each other like, we have to go create this conversation everywhere we possibly can and create this kind of culture everywhere we can. So we went, we spoke to anyone who would listen. And 3.5 years later, it was 100,000 girls. And we shared one message, very similar to the idea of this one, on a stage, and they would wait online for hours after. And they would share their stories. And these stories were all kinds of stories of rape and emotional abuse and sexuality and depression and suicide. And so what happened was we sent them all online to this interactive kind of online space that we had and to our social media. And now it's grown to over 250,000 girls. And then quickly after, we launched a local chapter program. A program that was peer-to-peer, groups and communities that would come together once a week to have honest conversations about things that matter. And every single girl that goes through our programming learns this kind of leadership, learns how to go first, learns how to lead with vulnerability. And we didn't know that this idea of leading with vulnerability would later become the crux for everything we do, and truly a significant impact on how our entire world can lead and follow moving forward. And every girl understands the magic that comes from being known. And so here we are with this incredible organization, and I'm staring at all of you, and you are the leaders. Maybe I'm a leader too, but you're all the leaders too. And so we have to be in this together. And I just want to point out how powerful you are. I want to point out the fact that when you're in a room, people are looking. They're looking at what you do, they're looking at what you're not doing, they're looking at what you say, and they're looking at what you don't say. They're watching how you treat people. They're watching your nonverbal communication. And that might feel like a heavy responsibility, but I hope it feels like an amazing opportunity. Because you have the power in your hands to grant people permission to be who they are instead of who the world is telling them to be or not be. You have the power to give people permission to speak their truth, to pursue their purpose, to discover their passion. You can do that. We're a follow the leader society. My question to you is, who is the leader? And will you choose as a leader to be known? Thank you so much.